Margaret, if you ever receive a message from me after I'm gone, don't ignore it. My husband had said those words 6 months before his funeral, and at the time I laughed and told him he was being dramatic. Standing beside his casket on a gray October morning in Ohio, I suddenly wished I had taken every word seriously. The wind carried the scent of damp grass across the cemetery as friends, neighbors, and relatives gathered beneath a sky the color of steel. Robert Collins had been my husband for 43 years. He was the man who taught our son how to ride a bicycle, the man who planted roses outside our kitchen window every spring, the man who always remembered exactly how I liked my coffee. And now everyone around me believed he was gone. I believed it too. At least I thought I did. My black coat felt heavier with every passing minute as I stood near the front row listening to the minister speak about Robert's kindness, his generosity, and the life he had built. My son Daniel stood nearby with his arm around his wife Vanessa. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue and leaned against him as if grief had drained all her strength. People kept approaching me with condolences. I thanked them politely, forcing a smile whenever someone squeezed my hand. Everything felt distant, unreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold from far away. Then my phone vibrated inside my purse. I almost ignored it. Funerals were not the place for messages. But something made me reach for it anyway. I glanced down at the screen. The number was unfamiliar. No name. No contact photo. Just a string of digits I had never seen before. For a moment I considered deleting it without reading. Then I opened the message. My heart stopped. I'm alive. Don't trust the woman standing beside you. I stared at the words. Read them again. Then a third time. My hands began to tremble. The cemetery around me seemed to fade into silence. I slowly lifted my eyes. Vanessa stood only a few feet away beside Daniel. She was looking toward the casket, her face carefully composed, her expression full of sorrow. Yet for the first time something about her seemed wrong. Not obvious. Not dramatic. Just wrong. A chill moved through me despite the thick coat wrapped around my shoulders. I looked back at the screen. The message remained exactly the same. No explanation. No signature. Nothing except those 8 words. I checked the sender again. Unknown number. No clues. My first thought was that someone was playing a cruel joke. My second thought was even worse. 6 months earlier, Robert had said those strange words at breakfast. If you ever receive a message from me after I'm gone, don't ignore it. At the time I had rolled my eyes. Now the memory returned with terrifying clarity. Before I could decide what to do, another vibration rattled my phone. A second message appeared beneath the first. Only 4 words. Watch her. Say nothing. I felt my stomach tighten. Across the cemetery, Vanessa turned her head slightly. For just a fraction of a second our eyes met. And in that brief moment, I could have sworn she wasn't grieving at all. I did exactly what the message told me to do. I said nothing. The funeral ended an hour later, and I accepted hugs, condolences, and sympathetic smiles while my mind replayed those words over and over again. Watch her. Say nothing. By the time Daniel offered to drive me home, I had already decided that whatever was happening, I could not afford to make a mistake. The drive back felt unusually quiet. Vanessa sat in the front passenger seat while I sat alone in the back. She occasionally reached over and squeezed Daniel's hand, speaking softly about how difficult the day had been. To anyone watching, she looked like a devoted daughter-in-law trying to support her family through a painful loss. Yet now I found myself studying every detail, every glance, every pause, every carefully chosen word. When we arrived at my house, Vanessa insisted on helping me inside. She walked through the familiar front door carrying a casserole dish someone had brought after the service. The house felt painfully empty without Robert. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked steadily. His favorite chair sat beside the living room window exactly where he had left it. Everything looked normal, yet nothing felt normal anymore. Vanessa placed the dish on the kitchen counter and turned toward me with a gentle smile. You should try to get some rest, Margaret, she said. Today has been exhausting. I thanked her and forced a smile of my own. For a moment she seemed to study my face as if searching for something. Then Daniel called her from the front porch and they left. I stood at the window watching their car disappear down the street. The moment they were gone, I pulled out my phone. No new messages. Just the two I had already received. I read them again. Then again. The words felt heavier each time. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table where Robert and I had shared thousands of breakfasts together. That was when another memory surfaced. About 3 months earlier, Robert had become strangely protective of certain papers in his home office. Whenever I entered the room unexpectedly, he would quickly close folders or lock his desk drawer. At the time I assumed he was organizing retirement documents. Now I was not so sure. The realization sent a chill through me. After finishing my tea, I walked upstairs to his office. The room still smelled faintly of cedar and coffee. His reading glasses rested beside a legal pad covered with neat handwriting. Everything appeared untouched. I sat in his chair and slowly opened the top desk drawer. Pens. Notebooks. Old receipts. Nothing unusual. The second drawer contained tax records and insurance documents. Again, nothing suspicious. Then I reached the bottom drawer. Locked. I stared at it for several seconds. In 43 years of marriage, Robert had never locked that drawer. My pulse quickened. I searched the desk for a key but found nothing. As I stood to leave, my phone vibrated once more. Another message from the unknown number appeared on the screen. This time it was only a single sentence. You never saw his body for a reason. I froze in the middle of the room. And for the first time since the funeral, I began to wonder whether Robert Collins had ever been in that casket at all. I did not sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the message glowing on my phone screen. You never saw his body for a reason. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, I got out of bed and walked downstairs. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the steady ticking of the grandfather clock. I stood in Robert's office doorway for several moments before stepping inside again. The locked drawer seemed to be waiting for me. I searched more carefully this time. I checked every shelf, every book, every small wooden box he had collected over the years. Nearly an hour later, I noticed something unusual inside the frame of a photograph sitting on the bookshelf. It was a picture of Robert and me standing beside Lake Erie during our 40th anniversary trip. The frame felt heavier than it should have. When I opened the back panel, a small brass key slipped into my hand. My heart immediately began to race. The key fit the locked drawer perfectly. For several seconds I simply stared at it. Then I turned it and slowly pulled the drawer open. Inside was not a stack of documents as I expected. There was only a sealed envelope with my name written across the front in Robert's unmistakable handwriting. Margaret. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. The note inside contained only 2 sentences. If you are reading this, things happened sooner than I expected. Go to box 314 before anyone realizes you know the truth. I read the note 3 times. There was no explanation. No signature. Nothing else except a small card tucked behind the letter. On it was the name of a local bank and a safe deposit box number. Box 314. The same number mentioned in Robert's note. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Suddenly another memory surfaced. About a month earlier, Robert had returned from town looking distracted. When I asked what was wrong, he smiled and changed the subject. Later that evening, I had noticed a bank receipt sticking out of his jacket pocket. At the time I thought nothing of it. Now I wondered if that visit had something to do with this box. My phone vibrated again. I almost dropped it. Another message from the unknown number appeared. The sender seemed to know exactly what I was doing. Good. You found the key. Do not tell Daniel. Do not tell Vanessa. Go alone. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Whoever was sending these messages knew about the envelope. They knew about the drawer. They knew about the key. For the first time, fear mixed with my growing curiosity. This was no random prank. Someone was guiding me. Someone who knew Robert's secrets. The following morning, I received a call from Vanessa. Her voice sounded unusually cheerful for a woman whose father-in-law had supposedly been buried the day before. She wanted to stop by and help me organize Robert's belongings. I thanked her and politely declined. A brief silence followed. Then she asked a strange question. Had I found anything unusual in his office? The moment she asked, every instinct inside me came alive. I smiled even though she could not see me. No, I said calmly. Nothing at all. But after I ended the call, I looked again at the card for box 314 and realized one thing with absolute certainty. Vanessa was searching for something. And whatever it was, Robert had hidden it from her. The bank opened at 9 o'clock the next morning. I arrived 15 minutes early and sat in my car across the street watching employees unlock the doors. A light rain tapped softly against the windshield while I held Robert's card in my hand. Box 314. During our marriage, Robert never kept secrets from me, at least none that I knew about. Yet somehow he had managed to create an entire plan without telling me. When the doors finally opened, I walked inside and approached the reception desk. The young woman behind the counter checked my identification, examined the card, and then disappeared into a back office. A few minutes later, an older manager returned with her. His expression changed slightly when he saw my name. Mrs. Collins, we have been instructed to grant you immediate access if you ever arrived alone. The words sent another chill through me. If you ever arrived alone. Robert had prepared for this. The manager escorted me through a secure hallway and into a private room. A few moments later, he placed a small metal box on the table and quietly left. For several seconds, I simply stared at it. Then I inserted the key attached to the card and lifted the lid. Inside were 3 items. A flash drive, thick envelope, and a photograph. My breath caught the moment I saw the picture. It showed Robert standing outside a restaurant parking lot. Across from him stood Vanessa. The photograph had been taken from a distance, but there was no mistaking either of them. The date printed in the corner showed it had been taken 4 months earlier. I quickly opened the envelope. Inside were copies of financial records, property documents, and handwritten notes from Robert. Several pages contained highlighted transactions involving accounts I had never seen before. Vanessa's name appeared repeatedly. So did the name of a consulting company that I did not recognize. The deeper I looked, the more confused I became. Nothing clearly explained what was happening. Yet everything suggested Robert had been investigating something for months. At the bottom of the stack sat a folded note addressed to me. Margaret, if you are reading this, then events have unfolded exactly as I feared. Trust only facts. Trust no emotions. Someone very close to our family is not who they pretend to be. Before I could continue, my phone vibrated. Another message from the unknown number appeared. Do not review the flash drive at home. You are being watched. I immediately looked around the private room. The walls were plain. The door remained closed. Yet suddenly I felt exposed, as if invisible eyes were following every move. I packed everything back into my purse except the photograph. That image refused to leave my mind. Vanessa had told me many times that she barely spoke to Robert unless family gatherings required it. Yet here she was meeting him privately months before his supposed death. When I exited the bank, the rain had stopped. Across the street, a dark SUV sat parked near the corner. The driver wore sunglasses despite the cloudy sky. As I stepped onto the sidewalk, the vehicle slowly pulled away. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was coincidence. But when my phone vibrated again, the new message made my stomach tighten. They know you opened the box. I drove home by a different route that afternoon, feeling foolish for checking my rearview mirror every few minutes and yet unable to stop myself. The photograph, the documents, the messages, none of it made sense on its own, but together they formed the outline of something much larger than I had imagined. When I reached the house, I locked the front door and closed every curtain before taking the flash drive from my purse. The warning about not reviewing it at home echoed in my mind. For nearly an hour I paced through the living room debating what to do. Finally, I remembered an old laptop Robert had kept in the garage workshop. It had never been connected to our home network and had not been used in years. If there was any safe way to examine the contents, this seemed to be it. I carried the dusty laptop to the kitchen table, plugged it in, and waited while it slowly powered on. My hand shook as I inserted the flash drive. Several folders appeared on the screen. Most were labeled with dates. One folder stood out immediately. It was named simply "Read First." I opened it. Inside was a video file recorded by Robert. For several seconds I could only stare at his face on the screen. He looked older than I remembered, tired but focused. He glanced at the camera, took a breath, and began speaking. Margaret, if you are watching this, then I was right to be concerned. I pray that I was wrong about many things, but I do not believe I was. My heart pounded. Robert explained that over the previous year, he had discovered irregular financial activity connected to several family investments. At first he believed it was a bookkeeping error. Then he found transfers, contracts, and signatures that raised deeper questions. He never directly accused anyone in the video. Instead, he repeatedly urged me to verify every document for myself. Trust facts. Trust records. Trust evidence. Those were the words he used again and again. Then the video ended abruptly. I searched through the remaining folders. They contained scanned bank statements, property records, and dozens of photographs. Many featured Vanessa meeting with individuals I did not recognize. Several showed her entering office buildings connected to companies listed in Robert's notes. As I studied the files, one detail appeared repeatedly. A man named Gregory Hart. His name surfaced in contracts, emails, and payment records. I had never heard Robert mention him before. Just then my phone rang. Daniel. I answered as calmly as possible. He sounded concerned and asked whether I was doing all right. Then, almost casually, he mentioned that Vanessa wanted to stop by later to help sort through Robert's office. The request immediately tightened my stomach. I told him I was tired and preferred to be alone. Another pause followed. Then Daniel said something that froze me in place. That is strange, he said. Vanessa could have sworn Dad kept important documents in his desk drawer. After the call ended, I sat motionless at the kitchen table. Vanessa knew about the drawer. She knew enough to ask about it. And for the first time, I began to wonder whether Robert had not only been hiding evidence from her. Perhaps he had been protecting it from everyone. For the next 2 days, I pretended that nothing had changed. I answered Daniel's calls. I thanked neighbors for the casseroles they continued to bring. I even allowed Vanessa to stop by briefly with a box of sympathy cards that had been delivered to her house by mistake. Through it all I smiled, listened, and watched. The more carefully I observed her, the more uneasy I became. Vanessa was not acting like someone overwhelmed by grief. She was acting like someone searching for something. Her eyes lingered on Robert's office whenever she visited. She asked casual questions that did not sound casual at all. Had I spoken with the attorney yet? Had I reviewed Robert's paperwork? Had I found any passwords he may have left behind? Each question seemed harmless by itself. Together they felt deliberate. On the third evening, another message arrived from the unknown number. Meet me tomorrow. 11 o'clock. Riverside Cafe. Come alone. For several minutes I stared at the screen. Every instinct told me to be cautious. Yet every answer I had uncovered so far had come from following these messages. The next morning I drove across town and arrived 10 minutes early. Riverside Cafe sat beside the river on a quiet street lined with maple trees. I chose a table near the window and ordered coffee. At exactly 11 o'clock, a man entered the cafe and walked directly toward me. He appeared to be in his late 50s with gray hair and a weathered face. When he stopped beside my table, he quietly asked, "Margaret Collins?" I nodded. He sat down without waiting for an invitation. "My name is Thomas Avery," he said. "I worked with Robert for nearly 20 years. My pulse quickened immediately. Thomas explained that he and Robert had remained close even after retirement. Several months ago, Robert began sharing concerns about financial discrepancies involving family assets and business investments. At first, Thomas thought Robert was simply being overly cautious. Then Robert showed him documents, emails, contracts, records that suggested someone was quietly moving money and property through a network of companies. "Did he tell you who?" I asked. Thomas shook his head. "Not directly. He said he was still gathering proof." He reached into his jacket and placed a folded piece of paper on the table. It was a copy of a hotel receipt dated 6 weeks before Robert's reported death. 2 names appeared on the reservation: Gregory Hart, Vanessa Collins. I felt the blood drain from my face. Thomas lowered his voice. Robert believed Gregory Hart was connected to everything. Before I could ask another question, my phone vibrated. The unknown number again. "Do not return home yet. Someone entered your house 20 minutes ago." I stared at the message in disbelief. Thomas noticed my expression immediately. "What is it?" he asked. I showed him the screen. His face tightened. Then he slowly turned toward the cafe window. Across the street, parked beneath a large oak tree, sat the same dark SUV I had seen outside the bank. Thomas and I remained inside the cafe for nearly an hour after spotting the SUV. Neither of us wanted to jump to conclusions, but neither of us could ignore the growing pattern of coincidences. The same vehicle had appeared near the bank and now outside the cafe. The messages continued arriving at exactly the right moments. And somehow, whoever was contacting me seemed to know details that should have been impossible to know. Before we left, Thomas handed me a business card with his personal number written on the back. "If anything feels wrong, call me immediately," he said. Promised I would. Instead of returning home, I drove to a small public library on the other side of town. The message had warned me that someone had entered my house. Whether that was true or not, I wanted time to think. I spent the afternoon reviewing copies of the documents from the safe deposit box. The name Gregory Hart appeared everywhere. Property transfers, consulting agreements, investment partnerships. The strange thing was that most of the transactions were completely legal on the surface. Yet together they formed a complicated web connecting Gregory, Vanessa, and several companies that had only existed for a few years. As evening approached, another message arrived. "Go home now. Pretend everything is normal. They are becoming nervous." I sat motionless for several seconds. Becoming nervous. That meant someone knew their plans were beginning to unravel. When I finally returned home, the house looked exactly as I had left it. The front door was locked. The curtains remained closed. Nothing appeared disturbed. Yet the moment I stepped inside, I noticed something unusual. A framed photograph of Robert and Daniel sat slightly crooked on the living room shelf. It was a tiny detail, the kind most people would never notice. But I noticed because Robert had always straightened that frame every morning. I carefully lifted it. Behind the photograph, tucked between the frame and the wall, was a folded piece of paper. My pulse quickened immediately. I unfolded it. The handwriting was not Robert's. It contained only one sentence. "Stop looking before you regret what you find." I read the note twice. Then a third time. Fear should have overwhelmed me. Instead, I felt something else. Determination. Whoever left the warning had entered my home and expected me to back away. They expected me to become frightened and obedient. Instead, the note confirmed everything. There truly was something worth hiding. A few minutes later, my phone rang. Vanessa. Her voice sounded strained. She asked whether I would attend a family meeting the following evening. According to her, Nathan Reed, our longtime attorney, needed to discuss several estate matters involving Robert's assets. I agreed immediately. After ending the call, I sat alone in the dark living room and stared at the warning note resting on the coffee table. Then my phone vibrated one more time. The unknown number had sent a final message for the night. Attend the meeting. Say very little. The truth is finally coming. The following evening arrived with a strange sense of inevitability. All day I felt as though invisible pieces were moving into place around me. By 6 o'clock, I was sitting in the conference room of Nathan Reed's law office. The room looked exactly as it had for years. Dark wood table, leather chairs, framed certificates on the walls. Yet the atmosphere felt entirely different. Daniel sat across from me, looking tired and distracted. Vanessa sat beside him, dressed elegantly and carrying a thick folder that never left her hands. Nathan occupied the head of the table, his expression unusually serious. After a few moments of polite conversation, Nathan opened a file and began discussing Robert's estate. He spoke carefully, reviewing trusts, investment accounts, and property holdings. I listened quietly while Vanessa occasionally interrupted with questions that seemed remarkably specific. More than once she referred to assets before Nathan mentioned them. Each time I noticed a brief flash of irritation cross the attorney's face. Then Vanessa produced a document from her folder. "There is one more item Robert wanted everyone to see," she said. Her voice was calm, but I could hear confidence underneath it. She slid the document toward Nathan. The attorney examined it for several seconds. His eyebrows drew together. Silence filled the room. Daniel looked confused. "What is it?" he asked. Nathan did not answer immediately. Instead, he removed his glasses and studied the pages again. Finally, he looked directly at Vanessa. "Where exactly did you obtain this?" The confidence in her expression wavered for the first time. Robert gave it to me months ago, she replied. He wanted it included if anything happened to him. Nathan remained silent. Something had changed. I could feel it. Daniel sensed it too. He shifted uneasily in his chair. Then my phone vibrated beneath the table. I glanced down. The unknown number. The message contained only 6 words. Let her keep talking. She is trapped. I slipped the phone back into my purse and raised my eyes. Vanessa was now explaining the document in greater detail. According to her, Robert had intended to restructure several family holdings before his death. She spoke confidently, almost rehearsed. Yet the more she spoke, the more uncomfortable Nathan became. Finally, he reached into his briefcase and removed a sealed envelope. That presents a problem, he said quietly. The room fell silent. Because 3 weeks before his reported death, Robert left very specific instructions with me. Vanessa's face lost color. Nathan placed the envelope on the table. Written across the front in Robert's handwriting were 4 words. Open only if necessary. My pulse quickened. Daniel leaned forward. Even Vanessa seemed unable to look away. Slowly, Nathan broke the seal and removed a second set of documents. Then he looked directly at me. Margaret, he said, I believe your husband knew this meeting would eventually happen. At that exact moment my phone vibrated again. Another message appeared. The final step begins now. No one spoke for several seconds after Nathan opened the envelope. The silence felt heavier than anything I had experienced since the funeral. Nathan carefully removed several documents and a small flash drive. Then he looked directly at Daniel. Your father instructed me to release these materials only if conflicting estate documents were ever presented. Daniel stared at him in confusion. Vanessa remained perfectly still. Nathan inserted the flash drive into his laptop and turned the screen toward the center of the table. A video began to play. The moment Robert appeared on the screen, every breath in the room seemed to stop. He looked exactly as I remembered him. Calm, focused, determined. If you are watching this, he began. Then events unfolded exactly as I feared. My eyes filled with tears. For days I had watched recordings and notes, but seeing him address all of us directly felt different. It felt immediate, real. Robert explained that he had uncovered an organized effort to gain control of family assets through misleading agreements, hidden partnerships, and carefully structured transactions. He never spoke with anger. He simply presented facts, dates, documents, names, Gregory Hart, several shell companies, a series of transactions connected to accounts that had never been disclosed to the family. Then he said something that changed everything. Daniel, if you are watching this, I need you to know that I never believed you were involved. Daniel's face immediately crumpled with emotion. Robert continued. You trusted people you loved. That is not a crime. But trust without verification nearly cost our family everything. Nathan then distributed copies of additional records Robert had prepared months earlier. Each document supported the evidence shown in the video. One by one, the inconsistencies became impossible to deny. Vanessa tried to speak several times, but every explanation was contradicted by another record, another email, another signed agreement. The confidence she had displayed earlier slowly disappeared. Then Nathan revealed the final document. It was the authentic estate plan, the one Robert had personally executed under multiple layers of verification. Every attempt to redirect ownership, authority, or control had already been anticipated and blocked. Robert had spent months building safeguards around everything he valued. Family property, investments, trust accounts, even personal collections. He had protected them all. A stunned silence filled the room. Then my phone vibrated one final time. I looked down. The unknown number had sent a short message. Check the last page. My hands trembled as I turned to the final page of Robert's letter. A handwritten note appeared at the bottom. Margaret, if you are reading this, then you finally know why I had to disappear. I needed enough time to expose the truth without putting you in the middle of the investigation. I never stopped protecting you. Before I could fully process the words, the conference room door opened. Everyone turned. A familiar voice broke the silence. I was hoping she would reach the last page before I walked in. My heart stopped. Standing in the doorway was Robert. Older. Tired. Very much alive. Daniel rose so quickly that his chair nearly tipped over. Tears streamed down my face as Robert smiled at me. In that moment, every mystery, every message, and every sleepless night suddenly made sense. The day I thought I had buried my husband was actually the day he began the final step of saving our family.